In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the integration between Cisco Viptela SD-WAN and Cisco Umbrella's Secure Internet Gateway and Secure Web Gateway. Now, I just recently posted a video on this same integration, but using the Meraki MX platform. And while the end result is the same outcome, the implementation and operation between these two platforms is quite different. So today I thought I would do a walkthrough on how to set up this integration with Cisco SD-WAN. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. So on the screen right now, you can see my Viptela SD-WAN lab running in EVE-NG. It's fairly simplistic, and I often use this for testing out new features and code. I have the control plane, which contains vManage, vBond, and 2 vSmart controllers. I also have 2 branch sites, one with site ID 200 and one with site ID 300. Both are running a single vEdge Cloud VM, and behind them we have a single tiny core Linux box that I use for internet access testing and that type of thing. Both of these sites do have both an internet connection and a connection over an MPLS. And relevant to today's video, on the internet circuit, you can see that I do have a switch that bridges out of the EVE-NG topology and does permit actual internet access to this lab. Now, to get started, the first thing that we're going to do is hop over to the Umbrella dashboard, and we can see that this is a pretty clean setup. There's no active networks, no network tunnels, or anything running right now. Now, unlike the Meraki integration, where we went over to deployments and network tunnels to create a new tunnel configuration, in this case, we're actually going to go down to admin and API keys. Right now, with the Meraki integration, we just create a standard IPSec tunnel and have to create our pre-shared key and network IDs and all that fun stuff. With the Viptela integration, everything's a little bit more automated. So what we'll do is we'll just create a set of API keys that'll be deployed out to every WAN edge device in our topology. Those devices will use those API keys to automatically reach out to Umbrella, set up the tunnel keys and all of that stuff on their own, and stand up the IPSec tunnels with very minimal configuration on our side. So now that we're on the API keys page, we'll go up into the upper right corner and click Create. We will select Umbrella Management because we'll need our WAN edge devices to have the ability to edit and create new configuration. And we'll hit Create. And now we'll be presented with our API keys. So let's go ahead and jump over to vManage and get rolling. So once we're over to our SD-WAN dashboard, we can see that we do have our 2 vSmarts, 2 WAN edges, 1 vBond, and 1 vManage that are all up and running, and everything looks healthy. So to start with, we're going to have to create a couple of new feature templates that will deploy out to our branch sites. So we'll go over to Configuration, down to Templates. Within here, we'll click on the Feature Template tab. We'll add a new template. Both of my devices right now are running vEdge Cloud, but if you were using a different device, you would select that here. So I'll go ahead and search for Cloud. I'll check the box for vEdge Cloud, and we'll get our list of templates that apply to that platform. We'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, and we'll see a template called SIG Credentials under Other Templates. First, we'll use that template to create a profile to store our API keys that'll be sent out to our WAN edge devices. So once we're in here, we'll go ahead and name our template. I'll provide it a description as well. And then down below, we see a couple of text boxes where we can enter in our API keys. Now, the first thing I'll call out is you might see the button at the bottom that says Get Keys. Unfortunately, right now, this button only works if you purchased your Viptela SD-WAN deployment with the DNA Premier licenses. The DNA Premier license does include Cisco Umbrella SIG Essentials as part of the SD-WAN package, and that triggers a little bit of an integration in the backend whereby you can just click this Get Keys button and vManage will reach out to your Umbrella deployment, grab your organization key, generate its own API keys, and auto-enter everything in here for you. Now, as I mentioned, right now that is only available for DNA Premier. Maybe that might change in the future, but for now, we'll just have to do a little bit of manual work on our own, which isn't too hard anyways. So we'll go ahead and paste in our registration key and secret from the Umbrella dashboard. Now for organization ID, if you don't have this already, it's actually easy enough to find. If you go back over to the Umbrella dashboard and we'll look at our URL for the API keys, within that URL, you'll see a 6 or 7 digit number. That's actually going to be your organization ID. So we'll go ahead and copy that value back over to vManage. And once we're done with all of that, we'll hit save. Next, we'll need to create a second feature template. This will be to specify our actual IPSec tunnel configuration. And again, we'll select vEdge Cloud. This time under VPN, we'll see a template right here called Secure Internet Gateway. We'll go ahead and click that. And again, provide this template with a name and a description. Now within this template is where we specify our umbrella IPSec tunnel configuration. This is going to be deployed out to every device template that we attach this template to. So to begin with, under configuration, we already have umbrella as our SIG provider, which is good. Next, we'll go ahead and hit add tunnel, and we'll be given a couple of options to fill in. So under interface name, it's IPSec, but I do want to create two interfaces here, both for a primary and a backup IPSec tunnel. So I'll go ahead and name this one IPSec 1. I'll leave the description as blank. And for tunnel source interface, if you recall back in my EVE-NG lab, it was Gigabit Ethernet 00, which was the outbound interface for internet access. So we'll go ahead and enter that here. And for data center, we only have the option of primary or secondary. Now, if you watched the video where I did this configuration for the Meraki MX, you might recall that we had to go to the umbrella documentation, find a data center IP address, and manually input that into the Meraki MX for an IPSec tunnel. Whereas in this case, we're not given much option as to what data center we want to connect to. The reason for that is within Viptela, our vEdge device is actually going to figure out which data center is closest to it and automatically tunnel to that location. And so you'll be able to select primary or secondary depending on which data center in the region you want to connect to. Since I'm planning on doing a HA pair of tunnels off of each vEdge, we'll leave this at primary and we'll go ahead and create a second interface to set as secondary. So we'll go ahead and hit add, and we'll go through this again. We'll hit add tunnel. We'll name the interface IPSec 2. Tunnel source is Gigabit Ethernet 00 again. And again, we'll set this to secondary for the data center. Now, the other thing to call out is in my case, I only have one internet circuit and one MPLS circuit. If you had a location with multiple internet circuits, you might want to create different tunnels for each one of those internet circuits. But again, since I only have one, I'm only creating the tunnels off of Gigabit Ethernet 00, which is my primary internet provider. And we'll go ahead and hit add. Okay, now we're almost done. At the bottom of the page, you can see the high availability setup. This is required. We'll have to set what our active and our backup tunnels are. Again, I created IPSec 1 for my active, so we'll select that. And for backup, IPSec 2. Now what this high availability configuration does is that in the event that the first IPSec tunnel ever goes down, the backup tunnel will kick in. Another thing I wanted to make sure that I mentioned is that at the time of this recording, each IPSec tunnel out to the Umbrella Cloud can only do a maximum of 250 megabit throughput. So if we needed more than that, we'd have to set up a configuration for equal cost multipathing. Now the caveat to that is that that feature is only available in 20.4.1 for the Viptela code, whereas the SIG tunneling feature templates and configuration has been available since 20.1. And if we wanted to configure a second pair of tunnels, we'd actually go down into the bottom right over here where we have the little plus sign, and we would add a second pair of tunnels. So for example, I could have created additional tunnels under our configuration. I would select those down here, keep our weights the same, and then we would begin load balancing traffic across those tunnels. However, since I'm just doing this for a test, I don't need that, and I'll go ahead and hit the minus button on the right side and remove the second set of tunnels. Once we're done and all of this looks good, we'll go ahead and hit save at the bottom. Now that we've built both of our feature templates, what we need to do is apply these to a device template. So we'll go back over to the device tab up top. And as you can see, I only have two templates created, one for my vSmart controllers and one for both of my WAN Edge devices. Depending on how many templates that you're using for remote location deployments, you may have to add this configuration to multiple sets of templates. But for me, I only have the one, so we'll go ahead and go over to the right side and click Edit. Once this loads, we'll go down under the Transport and Management VPN. And you might see on the right side, under Additional VPN 0 templates, we have an option for Secure Internet Gateway. We'll click that, and we'll go ahead and add our template for the IPSec tunnels. Once we add the Secure Internet Gateway template, we'll also be given an option all the way down at the bottom for SIG credentials. This is where we'll apply our API keys, and we'll click that template. Once we're done, we'll go ahead and hit Update. And as with any other deployment, we'll be given the ability to change any of our template variables. We'll go ahead and hit Next. We can also check out the configuration changes that are being made as part of these templates. So let's go ahead and click on one of these vEdges. Go ahead and click on Config Diff. Scroll down a little bit. And we can see that we do have our Secure Internet Gateway configuration that's being applied with our API keys, as well as a service that's being applied to our VPN 0 config. And if we scroll down just a little bit more, we'll also see our IPSec tunnel config. Now, as long as all that's good, we'll go ahead and click Configure Devices at the bottom to push out these changes. And we'll go ahead and confirm and hit OK. Now, while these templates are being pushed out to our WAN edge devices, I'll make it a point to say that at this point in time, the configuration that's being applied to the devices is just the API keys and the configuration of the IPsec tunnels. We have yet to create any configuration that would actually route traffic across those tunnels, so this change should not be impacting to any user traffic at that remote location. Okay, looks like our templates have been successfully configured on our remote devices. One way that we can validate this is actually by logging into one of the remote devices. So we'll go ahead and pick the vEdge for site 300, and I'll use a command show secure internet gateway tunnels. And once we enter that command, we'll see that we have our config for tunnel IPsec 1 and tunnel IPsec 2. We'll see a tunnel ID, a tunnel name, the last API status, and the last request, which in both cases was just to create the tunnel. Now, while it may seem confusing at first, the tunnel name is actually something that we can use to cross-reference this against the Umbrella dashboard. So if you look at the name, in the first segment, we actually have the site ID. So both of these say site 300. Next, we'll have the device system IP. In this case, the system IP for this vEdge is 10.10.10.236. We'll also see which interface these are being sourced from. So we'll see at the end IF IPsec 1 and IF IPsec 2. Now, if you're wondering what these tunnel names are used for, we'll jump back over to the Umbrella dashboard real quick. And we'll go ahead and go up to deployments and network tunnels. And sure enough, we see all 4 of our network tunnels, 2 from each WAN edge device that have been configured and already up and running, both to a primary data center and the backup data center. These have all been auto-configured by the WAN edge devices without us having to manually configure each tunnel on its own. And again, if we hover over any of these tunnel names, we'll see the same tunnel name that we saw within the vEdge CLI. All right, now that we know that our IPsec tunnels are all up and running, let's go ahead and move on to migrating some traffic over those tunnels. So we'll go back over to vManage, and again, we'll go over to Configuration, Templates, and then we'll go over to Feature Templates. Now for both of my vEdge cloud appliances, the LAN side network is using VPN 10. So what we'll need to do is configure that VPN template for a service route. And so we'll go ahead and edit this template LAN VPN 10 that I have down here. And once this loads, we can go ahead and click Service Route up top. And under this segment, we'll go ahead and create a new service route for prefix. This is where we're going to put in whatever route for the traffic that we want to push across the VPN. Since this is intended to be an internet gateway service, I'll go ahead and put 0.0.0.0/0. And service is already set at SIG, so we'll go ahead and just click Add on the right side. And once we're done with that, we'll go all the way down to the bottom and click Update. Once again, we'll be provided with the ability to change any of our variables. We don't want to, so we'll go ahead and click Next. And if we want to, we can again very quickly click on one of our WAN edge devices, click on Config Diff, and we'll scroll down just far enough to see we're adding a new command, IP service route 0000/0 VPN 0 for service SIG. So once we're done validating the configuration, let's go ahead and test out internet access from our remote device before we start pushing traffic over the VPN. So I'll go ahead and use my Linux machine running at site 300, and we'll go ahead and go to Google. And so we can see that we have internet access, and we'll see what our public IP currently shows as. And so for right now, we can go ahead and see that our IP address starts with 99. We'll go ahead and go back over to the vManage dashboard, and we'll go ahead and hit Configure Devices. Again, confirm changes and hit OK. Now, while this is configuring, what this is going to do is inject that service route on the LAN 10 VPN so that all internet traffic will traverse the IPsec VPN tunnel out to Umbrella SIG, where then we can apply different firewall policies or web filtering policies to secure our user traffic. Once that configuration is deployed, we can validate this in a couple of different ways. First, we'll start by going within vManage over to Monitor, down to Network. We'll go ahead and pick our vEdge 02 for site 300. And then on the left side, we'll scroll down and click on the Interfaces button. And now below at the bottom, you can see that we do have our normal internet and MPLS interfaces, as well as we do have our IPsec 1 and IPsec 2 interfaces. Now what I want to set up on here is we'll go ahead and deselect everything but IPsec 1 and IPsec 2. And then up in the graph, we'll go ahead and hit real time so we can watch some of that traffic go across the network. Okay, now that we have that started, we'll do two things real quick. First, we'll hop over to our vEdge device and we'll do a show IP route for VPN 10. And sure enough, we can see that first line there for 0.0.0.0/0 out IPSec 1 with our next hop VPN of VPN 0. Next, we'll go ahead and jump back over to our client device. Let's go ahead and refresh this page and see if we, 1, have internet access, and 2, see if our public IP address has changed. And sure enough, this time our IP address is starting with a 146.112, so we know that we're going out through a Cisco Umbrella data center. And as we can see in the background on our vManage dashboard, we also see the traffic going out through our IPSec 1 interface. Now, with all that said and done, we now know that our IPSec tunnels are up and configured for both of our vEdge cloud devices at both of our remote sites. And we know that user-facing traffic on the LAN side network is being routed out through our vEdge out over the IPSec tunnel and to the Umbrella cloud for filtering. So the next step is to go ahead and take a look at how to set up some of that filtering on the Umbrella dashboard. So within the Umbrella dashboard, the first thing that we'll go to is we'll go to Policies, Firewall Policy. And the first thing is we see that we have a default rule that is enabled that is allow any application, any protocol, any IPs, any ports. We'll create a new policy up in the upper right corner. We'll click Add. We'll go ahead and name this test_block, and we'll leave our priority as last before the default. We'll scroll down just a little bit, and down here we can start to see the different items that we can filter traffic on. First, under protocol, I'll go ahead and select ICMP. Source tunnels is at any right now, but we have the ability to hit this dropdown, hit specify tunnels, and if we begin typing a name, so if I type site, we'll see each one of our tunnels here. So we have the ability, if we wanted to block traffic from one location and not the other, to only include those IPsec tunnels for this rule set. But since I want this rule to apply to all of these locations, I'll go ahead and change from specify tunnels back to any. We'll leave source IPs as any, destination IPs, we'll hit specific IP, and we're going to block traffic to 8.8.8.8 and hit add. We'll scroll down just a little bit further. We'll leave the rule schedule as all the time, doesn't expire. Hit counter, time interval, we'll leave it 24 hours. We do want to go ahead and change this to block traffic, and we want to enable logging on this rule. Once we're done with that, in the bottom right corner, we'll click save. And now that we can see our block rule is enabled, we'll go ahead and jump over to our Linux VM, open up a command prompt, and we'll try to ping 8.8.8.8. And it looks like we're not getting a response. However, if we try to ping 8.8.4.4, we are able to successfully reach that. So we'll go ahead and quit that. Now, if we go back to the Umbrella dashboard and refresh our firewall policy page, sure enough, we can see that we last hit the rule set just a couple of minutes ago, and we do have a hit count of 1 in the past 24 hours. Next, let's go ahead and test out web filtering. So we'll go over to the left side again, and under Policies, we'll click on Web Policies. And we'll see that right now I only have a default web policy configured. We'll expand that. And if you notice up at the upper left side, we see that this applies to all identities. And so what that means for us in this case is that all traffic that's being funneled through our IPsec tunnel and out to Umbrella SIG will automatically be inspected for our web filtering policies. And so all we have to do to start filtering traffic is to create the policy that we want to enforce. Now I'll go ahead and jump over to the destination list, click Enable. I already have a single destination called block_Cisco. We'll add that to our block list. We'll hit set and return. We'll scroll down to the bottom and we'll go ahead and click save. And now we can see our block list has been added. So to go ahead and test this, we'll hop back over to our Linux VM. We'll open up a new tab and we'll go ahead and try to go to cisco.com. And we know our policy is working because very quickly we get the response back from Cisco Umbrella saying that this website is blocked due to content filtering. And one last thing that we'll want to take a look at before we finish up here, we'll go ahead and go back to the Umbrella dashboard. We'll go over to Reporting, down to Activity Search, and within the screen we'll see some of the recent activity that's been logged by the Umbrella Cloud. Now I've noticed sometimes it does take a while for some of these requests to show up in here, so we don't see our web history just yet. But we do see our log from our ping test. So we can see again our identity, site ID 300 with device ID 10.10.10.36. Source interface was IPsec 1. We tried to go to that 8.8.8.8 address, and sure enough, our action was blocked. So with everything that we've accomplished so far, we've configured our IPsec tunnels within the Viptela SD-WAN network to connect out to Cisco Umbrella, where we can implement both firewalling and secure web gateway web filtering. Now all that's left is to go through and configure any additional policies and filtering that we want to set up in order to secure our user traffic. And that's where I'll go ahead and wrap up this video. I hope that this was helpful, and thank you for watching.